Welcome to the Security Foundation Study Guide. In this video, we will continue with Chapter 6A, which talks about relevant U.S. laws and computer crime laws. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Now let's right into our first topic, right after this short break. Historically, the United States has been a leader in the development and implementation of information security legislation to prevent misuse and exploitation of information and information technology. Information security legislation contributes to a more reliable business environment, which in turn enables a stable economy. In its global leadership capacity, the United States has demonstrated a clear understanding of the importance of securing information and has specified penalties for people and organizations that breach U.S. civil statutes. The sections that follow present the most important U.S. laws that apply to information security. Several key laws are relevant to the field of information security and are of particular interest to those who live or work in the United States. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986, or CFAA, is the cornerstone of many computer-related federal laws and enforcement efforts. It was originally written as an extension and clarification to the Comprehensive Crime Control Act of 1984. The CFAA was amended by the National Information Infrastructure Protection Act of 1996, which modified several sections of the previous act and increased the penalties for selected crimes. The punishment for offenses prosecuted under this statute includes fines, imprisonment of up to 20 years, or both. The severity of the penalty depends on the value of the information obtained and whether the offense is judged to have been committed for the following reasons: for purposes of commercial advantage, for private financial gain, or in furtherance of a criminal act. The preceding law and many others were further modified by the USA Patriot Act of 2001, which provides law enforcement agencies with broader latitude to combat terrorism-related activities. The full title of this act is the Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism Act of 2001. In 2006, this act was amended by the USA Patriot Improvement and Reauthorization Act, which made permanent 14 of the 16 expanded powers of the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI in investigating terrorist activity. The act also reset an expiration date written into the law as a so-called sunset clause for certain wiretaps under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act of 1978, or FISA, and revised many of the criminal penalties and procedures associated with criminal and terrorist activities. Next, we will slide into our next topic, but right after this break. In 2011, President Obama signed the Patriot Sunset Extension Act, which provided yet another extension of certain provisions of the USA Patriot Act, specifically those related to wiretaps, searching of business records, and the surveillance of people with suspected ties to terrorism. Some of the laws modified by the USA Patriot Act are among the earliest laws created to deal with electronic technology. Certain portions of the USA Patriot Act were extended in 2006, 2010, and 2011. In May 2015, the U.S. Senate failed to extend the act, resulting in its expiration on June 1, 2015. The controversy over Section 215, which allowed the National Security Agency, NSA, to collect metadata, for example, the to and from information from phone records, initially resulted in an attempt to transfer the responsibility for collecting and reporting this information to the telecommunications companies involved as part of the USA Freedom Act. The Act's name is an abbreviation of Uniting and Strengthening America by Fulfilling Rights and Ending Eavesdropping, Dragnet Collection and Online Monitoring Act. However, this act met with similar resistance until the stalemate in Congress resulted in the sunset of key components of the USA Patriot Act. The complex political issues of this legislation were eventually resolved, and the USA Freedom Act was signed into law by President Obama in June 2015. After much controversy over the past several years, the USA Patriot Act is currently expired after an amended version of the act was threatened with a veto by President Trump and then was indefinitely postponed by Congress in June 2020. Another key law, the Computer Security Act of 1987, was one of the first attempts to protect federal computer systems by establishing minimum acceptable security practices. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, known as the National Bureau of Standards prior to 1988, is responsible for developing these security standards and guidelines in cooperation with the National Security Agency. All right, we will burn into our last section right after this short break. What if an organization does not demand or even encourage strong ethical behavior from its employees? What if an organization does not behave ethically? Even if there is no breach of criminal law in a case, there can still be liability, legal and financial responsibility. Liability includes the legal obligation to make restitution, to pay penalties or fines for wrongs committed. The bottom line is that if an employee performs an illegal or unethical act that causes some degree of harm, the employer may be held financially liable for that action, regardless of whether the employer authorized the act. An organization increases its liability if it refuses to take measures known as due care, or a standard of due care. Similarly, due diligence requires that an organization make a valid attempt to continually maintain this level of effort. Whereas due care means the organization acts legally and ethically, due diligence means it ensures compliance with this level of expected behavior, essentially the management of due care. Given the Internet's global reach, those who could be injured or wronged by an organization's employees might live anywhere in the world. Under the U.S. legal system, any court can assert its authority over an individual or organization if it can establish jurisdiction. This is sometimes referred to as long-arm jurisdiction when laws are stretched to apply to parties in distant locations. Trying a case in the injured party's home area is usually favorable to the injured party. Now let's fight our way into the next topic. In 2002, Congress passed the Federal Information Security Management Act, FISMA, which mandates that all federal agencies establish information security programs to protect their information assets. The act effectively brought the federal government into alignment with the private sector. FISMA extended NIST's responsibilities, along with those of the Office of Management and Budget. The document also provided many of the definitions used today in information security. FISMA requires federal agencies to implement information security management programs for systems that support their mission. The program must include periodic risk assessment of the potential problems that could result from security failures and implementation of policies and procedures based on the assessment. Additional planning is also expected for network security, incident response, disaster recovery, and continuity of operations. Agency management is expected to implement ongoing evaluations of their security program's effectiveness and provide security education, training, and awareness for all people who interact with agency systems. FISMA was updated by the Federal Information Security Modernization Act of 2014, aka FISMA Reform, which specifically focused on enhancing the federal government's ability to respond to security attacks on government agencies and departments. FISMA handles the following events: Cybersecurity Supply Chain Risk Management, NIST Risk Management Framework, Information Security and Privacy Advisory Board, ISPAB, March 2025 meeting, an introduction to draft, SP 800, 157 Rev 1, derived PIV credentials, and SP 800, 217 PIV Federation, Federal Cybersecurity and Privacy Professionals Forum meeting. So there you have it for FISMA. If you find this video useful, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. To see more videos like this, please click in the rectangle in the middle of your screen. To see other videos from this channel, please click the circle on the bottom right. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day. See you on the next one.